by the governor's
Sorry.
and a recording is in progress. Since we're now recording, I'm going to start over so we get this on record. As permitted by the governor's disaster declaration of December 9th, 2022, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee to meet in person. To ensure that a transparent and open meeting is possible, we will post the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance, and we'll provide a recording of this meeting linked on our website, and we'll take all votes by roll call. And by our website, I mean CMAPs, not IDOT's, just a point of clarity. So thank you for that. Let me say got it here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan for some logistical announcements before we move on.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. As you heard, this meeting is being recorded. Please use the mute function when you're not speaking. This will just help to eliminate excessive background noise. Use the mute button for those on computer. Those on the phone can use *6 to mute and unmute. For members of the public, if you have a question during the meeting, please use the chat box, which staff will be monitoring. Additionally, if you wish to address the committee during the public comment agenda item, you can indicate your desire to do so in the chat box. For members of the committee, when making a motion, please include your name so staff can properly record it. And that is it for my meeting announcements.
Thank you, Ryan. I think we'll go to Dan for a roll call.
Yep. All right, let's start. IDOT.
Here.
CMAP.
Present.
CDOT.
Here. Sorry, can you?
Yeah, we got.
Sorry.
CTA. Sorry, is CTA on mute? I see Christina.
Here, I'm here.
Counties.
Present.
Council of the Mayors. I believe Lenny's coming, but I don't have him on here yet, so I'll watch for that. Metro.
Present.
Pace.
Present.
RTA.
Present.
FHWA.
Here.
And FTA.
Here.
All right, and that's forum then.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So item 2, agenda changes or announcements. Are there any agenda changes? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item. Item 2.02 is CMAP announcements, and I believe we have Executive Director Alleman here. Would you like to say a few words for us? Thank you.
Yep, sounds good. And please call me Erin, but I appreciate the formality. I wanted to first off, I know many of you know Amy Lee from her work at the Tollway and her work on behalf of the region. Prior to that, I think CTA, RTA experience. She's joined the team here as our Director of Transportation, overseeing our research analysis and programming team. So we are excited to have her on board. And I think one of the key things that she is working on with her team is really helping to make sure that our transportation committees and our transportation working groups and the UWP committee are all well organized and coordinated. And that's going to be one of the things that her team is going to be tackling here in the coming year. And we were super excited to get additional resources through the federal infrastructure bill, because one of the things that will help us do is have some structured, coordinated liaisons between all of these committees and our team to make sure that we're getting you materials on time, to make sure that we are, being transparent and really thinking about sort of the performance measures that come along with the programmatic initiatives that we need as well. So some of the things that I've talked to this committee about previously have been really thinking about our core and our competitive programs into the future. I know that you all want predictability. It helps you plan for your annual core programs and help us, participate by your participation in the regional planning process and getting your projects and programs into the TIP. But I also recognize and see the value that we have had in the past for the competitive program. We have been under, like many of your agencies, again, some stressors over the past couple of years. We've replaced 33 positions overall. And so, this ebb and flow has not been super helpful to us, making sure that we are providing the most clarity to you all at the UWP committee. But that is one of the top priorities that I have for moving forward, is really making sure that we are putting in place a predictable, competitive program and predictability to the core program funding that supports your agency's participation in the regional planning process as well. When we were reviewing the materials for this meeting, we recognized that we probably sent a couple mixed messages in our call for core program proposals here. I know many of you did submit core program proposals, but there were a couple areas where it does seem like there was some competitive or less focused on core programmatic initiatives and staff initiatives in that memo. To that end, what our team has tried to do is work with you all, have individual meetings with you all to provide some clarity. And so again, moving forward, once this call is complete and once we're sort of through this budget cycle, we will turn our attentions to really formalizing, what is a core proposal? What is a fund? What are the functions and the responsibilities? And how do we start measuring that better here? So that's on the table. Again, I know too, one of the things that's really important for us is balancing this need for the core participation in the MPO policy, the MPO activities for the region, but then also balancing the needs of, what could we do with a competitive program as well. So we want to make sure that the competitive program doesn't necessarily eat into the budget of the core program, but we do recognize that, many of your agencies do see value from the planning projects that we've done through a competitive program. So that is still coming back. It is not back this time around, but it is something that I am committed to doing and just wanted to express that to you all here this afternoon. I almost said morning. It's been so gray for so many days. Who knows what time it is. But anyways, that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions, but those are my opening remarks. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Executive Director Alleman?
All right, well, I'll be on the line for a little bit here before I have to hop to another meeting.
Well, thank you very much for coming and making those comments. And if anybody does have any questions, raise your hand or speak up. Otherwise, we'll continue on. So thank you. Approval of the minutes. So in the package is a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting, November 16th. Are there any requested changes or corrections to those? Hearing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved. This is Heather Mullins.
And a second?
I'll second it. Buck Doyle with CDOT.
Thank you, Buck. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, staff, will you call the roll?
Sure. CMAP,
Yes.
CDOT,
Sorry, yes.
CPA,
Yes.
counties,
Yes.
council of mayors,
Yes.
Metro,
Yes.
PACE,
Yes.
and RTA.
Yes.
All right, all yeses.
Thank you. The motion passes. So item 4.1 is an approval item. Let me look here, make sure I got this right. So the next item is FY24 UWP core proposals. In October, a call was made for the FY24 UWP program. 8 proposals were received. They were discussed on November 16th. And the document that was attached to the package here was recommended for approval. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alex Sensen, CMAP's Director of Strategic Alignment and Innovation, to discuss real quick.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As Erin mentioned in her remarks, this is a revised proposal that reflects some one-on-one conversations that we had with each of the members of the committee to try to come to a compromise and a consensus around a revised set of proposals that would match the federal mark that CMAP has received. In order to arrive at this amount, and Dan, you can move on to the next slide so folks can see the table. We tried to use a fairly simple mathematical formula and also reflect as closely as we could the 5-year historical average of what the UWP committee members had received in the past. In part, this is just really something we wanted to emphasize is that we want to think more deeply and more clearly about, what constitutes core MPO activities and how can we be very fiscally responsible in how we're funding those activities. So that was one of the large reasons why we use that 5-year historical average for these amounts. I think we've outlined a little bit the math that we used behind the revised proposals. This does reflect a balanced unified work program budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And we're happy to take any questions. We do have some other CMAP staff on the line, including our Director of Finance, Peter. We have Amy McEwen, our Chief of Staff, and as Erin mentioned, we have Amy Lee, our new Director or Deputy of Transportation. So we're happy to take any questions. And Dan, if you'd like to move on to the next slide, we've also just put together a chart to show that the revised proposal very closely matches the 5-year historical average of these core proposals. Just to emphasize that a little bit more.
Thank you, Alex. Does anybody have any questions or would like to discuss?
Mike, I have a question. David Kralik from Metro.
Yes, sir.
So Alex and Dan and CMAP staff, when you shared a proposal with members on December 1st that represented kind of partial movement in this direction and not full movement in this direction, and then a revision from that. The one revision seemed to be capping the PACE Shared Mobility Program at their request, and then moving that additional dollars to CMAP. Those additional resources put CMAP above the not only above their request where you already were in the 12-1 proposal, but further above the 2.5% increase that you had applied to look to apply across the board. Can you describe a little bit about the process and thinking for the reallocation of that, the difference between from their movement to from the movement from PACE to NPO activities, and what that will be used for?
Can take a start at that one. So the monies coming through here are for core MPO responsibilities, as we've talked about before. The preponderance of those are the responsibility of CMAP as the MPO for the entire region, unlike some other areas. And we do want to get here long term. That's what Erin was kind of talking about in her comments, was getting to some kind of targets or marks for the amount of money that CMAP will give out. The way the budget is built based on the deadlines that we all work on to make sure that IDOT is able to approve it and that we're able to approve the agreements on time. CMAP's budget is incomplete at this point, right? And so we're still working through with our elected body, our board members, what the expenditures will be, what the priorities will be here at CMAP for our full budget. So like if I think of IDNR or other funding sources that CMAP works with, they'll identify we have X dollars to give out to communities, and then they'll look at all the different proposals that they receive. In our case right now, we're building our budget while we're also figuring out how much money we have the ability to sub-allocate. And so we're working through all of the requirements from IIJA, from FHWA and other entities for what we need to do to meet our responsibilities under the agreements that we have. And so part of what we're looking at is how much can we afford to sub-allocate out and still meet the responsibilities of the agency. So that's what we're weighing as we go through this process. What Aaron kind of again talked about is long-term, we want to get to a more multi-year process where we do have a little stronger targets, I'll say, identified in advance because we do build the budget at the same time we're considering allocations to others.
So I guess, can you describe a little bit more about how your needs changed from the submitted request of when you submitted the request to the UWP program then the ultimate proposal that's before us today increases the federal amount for that by approximately $100,000?
Certainly. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Amy. I think there are a couple things going on this year. One of which is our responsibility to the General Assembly to deliver a report on the future of transit. This morning, our executive committee met and approved about $500,000 worth of contracts work that we had not planned for in last year's budget. So oftentimes we're dealing with things that the legislature is asking us to do, but not providing us additional revenue to do that. So expenditures in our annual year oftentimes get shifted around, but we were afforded the opportunity with the increase in MARC through the infrastructure bill here to try and build some of that in. I think the other thing too that I want to recognize for this committee is that, this committee's roles and responsibilities have two areas of purview, right? The core program, like what the agencies are doing to help us make sure that we're meeting the regulations, and the competitive program here too. So again, all of our work that we do at CMAP is on behalf of the region, our modeling, our planning, our economic development research as well. So, with the infrastructure bill, there is requirements for us to do the safe and complete streets planning and setting aside funding for that. But there's also a request that we look at housing and how housing ties further to the rest of the region, the resiliency work that we need to do to help make sure our communities can compete for federal dollars. There's just a lot that's been placed on us over the past couple of years with the passage of the new transportation bill that we are trying to get in order here fast and furiously. Amy, was there anything else you wanted to weigh in? I know I cut you off.
Nope, great addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
This is Christina at CTA. I just wanted to make a comment. I know when you're trying to balance this budget, you have to start somewhere and you have to, use a formula that makes it, equal amongst all of us. But I did just want to say, using the 5-year historical average as a way to prove out up to this point, I think several of the agencies came to the core proposals this year knowingly requesting more money than we had in the past. And I think the 5-year historical averages reflect years where we weren't operating our core programs fully. So I just wanted to make that point. And I understand, looking forward and next year, things will be maybe looked at a little bit differently, but we understood that we were asking for more this year. And just looking at the rear view, just want to acknowledge that we hadn't been fully staffed in our own core program. So just want to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any response or any other questions or comments?
This is Dave Townsend. One other thing, as Christina mentioned, was with the historic review that we've also had the influx of the state funding that on the capital side. So there was more elements for the service boards to spend the money, thus increasing their capital programs. So I mean, it's kind of a regional issue that we're all facing, is to with more responsibilities and more projects and funding that we have to work with.
You know, fair point too. I think we've been talking too about the increased demand on our modeling team, as a lot of the dollars that are coming are now competitive, and for your agencies to be able to put together those proposals, look at sort of the cost benefit analysis. I know that Amy's been working with her team as well, but we are getting requests from all sorts of stakeholders across the region who are submitting those grant applications. So we recognize that more money does mean more work for everyone. So good point, Dave.
Yeah, and I can kind of second that point by Director Alleman. The new discretionary grant programs are a huge resource load on anybody going for the grants. And until it was mentioned recently in a meeting, it hadn't occurred to me that, you know, every grant app that occurs in the CMAP area that's going to need a cost benefit analysis, or at least a good many of them are going to come to CMAP to get modeling support for those projects. And I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of local agencies going for projects, the state's going for projects. And so that's a substantial workload. Are there any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion and a second for approval?
Buck Doyle, CDOT, I'll put the motion forward.
Does anybody, and that was a motion for approval?
Motion for approval, sorry.
Would anybody like to second that?
Scott Hennings from the counties will second that.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, staff, will you call the roll, take a vote?
Sure. Excuse me. CMAP,
Yes.
CDOT,
Yes.
CTA,
Yes.
counties,
Yes.
Council of Mayors,
Yes.
Metro,
Yes.
PACE,
Yes.
and RTA.
Yes.
All right, we have all yeses.
The motion passes, and I'd like to thank all the committee members and CMAP for, you know, your efforts on putting these proposals together and talking it out. And, you know, with a special thanks for Will County in the last meeting, they took the step to reduce their request right off the bat to help close some gaps. So thanks very much, everybody. Moving on, item 5, other business. Is there any new business to come before the committee?
Oh, this is Dave. One question. Now, where does this, now is this going to go to the transportation for approval? I guess what's the timeline for getting the contracts out?
Would somebody from CMAP like to respond to that? I heard two questions. What's the next approval step? And then how quickly can contracts be set up?
So I can talk to the board approval process, but I'll let my staff talk to what the dates are for TC, but it'll go to Transportation Committee, it'll go to the MPO Policy Committee, and it will go to the board. for final, all the pieces, and then the total consolidated budget. The board approves it in February. Then it goes to IDOT, who I don't know if you already know the date of your approval, but our agreements will be shortly thereafter we receive the approval from IDOT.
Yeah,
First start on July 1.
yeah, they start on, sorry, I was gonna say that. So usually the document, UWP document gets put together, that gets approved, and then we immediately start working on contracts. And our goal is always July 1, barring any holdups. Sorry, Mike, on your end. So I think
I was gonna say Christmas, but yeah, July 1 is more accurate.
Well, and to the Transportation Committee, I know Transportation Committee has a meeting on Friday. This is not quite in the right time frame to get it on Friday's agenda, just based on our getting the agenda out already. So the next TC meeting is in January, where it would be discussed at TC, is my like understanding hanging out in the back of my mind that I recall.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we're meeting in February, TC.
Yeah, TC doesn't meet again until February 24th. After this Friday.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to get a timeline because, 6 months will be here before we know it. Thanks.
Yes, it will. Are there any other business items folks would want to bring up on the committee? We'll move on to agenda item 6 then. Staff, do we have any comments received prior to today or anything come up in the chat box?
nothing from email, and I don't see anything on the chat right now.
Well, thank you. Next meeting will be May 10th, 2023 at 1 p.m. So won't see y'all for a little while, but reach out if you need anything for sure. Next item is adjournment. If there's no other business items, we are adjourned. Thank you. Happy holidays. Thanks, Sydney.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, have a good rest of your day, rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.